living fully alive in every way. You're listening to Relationship Prescriptions with Dr. Carol.
Hi there, friends. It's Dr. Carol, and welcome to Relationship Prescriptions. Let me ask you, have you been in a situation where something is just not okay? A struggle with a relationship, maybe with your finances, maybe with your health, maybe with your relationship with God, and you feel like you have no one that you can talk to about that? I know I've been there, and that is one of the most painful situations that anyone can experience. That feeling like there's nobody who will understand, nobody that's safe to talk to. Well, I want to talk with you about that feeling, a few things that we know about research related to that, and then I want to give you 3 specific things to do in that setting when you feel like you can't talk to anyone. But first, that feeling of being lonely, of being isolated, like there's nobody that you can really connect with, is not only uncomfortable emotionally, it can actually be dangerous. There has been some significant research over the last number of years. One study in particular that has fascinated me. This was a study done through Harvard University. They followed something like 20,000 people over a period of time and looked at what made them happy and what made them unhappy. They looked at health, at money, at relationships, and a number of different things. Of all the possible determinants of happiness, the number one, the most important, was the quality of close, personal, intimate relationships. If those are going well, your physical health, your financial status, and whatever have a comparatively small impact on your happiness. That does not say that the circumstances around us are unimportant. It's just that when those personal relationships are okay, are going strong, you can deal with all that other stuff. But even if all that other stuff is going well and your close personal relationships are not okay, that is a determinant for unhappiness, for misery, for distress. That truth has been borne out in what's called happiness research around the world over the last 20 or 30 years. It's consistent that the single most important determinant of our well-being, of our happiness, above everything else, is personal relationships. But so many of us feel like that's not going okay, like we don't have anybody to talk to. In the church, those of us who are followers of Jesus know that God designed his family, the family of God, to be a place where you can talk to people, where you can get that kind of connection and support. But far too often, even in the body of Christ, there's that feeling that I don't have anybody I can talk to. Maybe you know that having somebody to share with would make a difference, but there's nobody safe that you really feel like you can talk with who wouldn't demean you, who wouldn't pass it around the prayer line, i.e. the line. If you are in any position of leadership at all, a small group leader, teaching Sunday school, a member of the choir, or whatever, if you have any connection with leadership in your church, the pressure can be even greater. You feel like, well, if I did talk to somebody about my problem, they'd look differently at me, or they wouldn't want me around, or would disinvite me from doing what I'm doing. You know, we know intellectually that that's not the way things ought to be. And yet, practically speaking, that sense of isolation can be overwhelming, incredibly disturbing. Even physically, we know that is dangerous. The feeling of loneliness, persistent loneliness, rivals obesity and smoking as a risk factor for disability, illness, and even early death. God designed us to be in community. And when that community is not going well, we are impacted. Our physical health, our emotions, even our ability to grow and connect with God is impacted when those relationships are not doing well. So what do you do in those kinds of situations? This is an area that I have had to wrestle with personally at various times in my life. And I've learned some practical things to do when you have that feeling like there's nobody else to talk with. And I'd like to share 3 of those things with you. I am absolutely certain that in your mess, whatever the challenge or struggle that you're facing, I am absolutely certain that you are not the only one, that other people have and are experiencing similar things. Even Peter says in scripture, know that your brothers around the world are suffering in similar ways. But when you're in the middle of it, it can feel so lonely and so overwhelming. So what do you do at those times? 3 steps. Number 1, talk to Jesus. Now, I know you may immediately feel like, well, I need somebody with skin on. I need somebody I can see, who can listen, who can understand, and be God with skin on. And yes, and hold on, I'll talk about that in just a minute. But the first thing to do is talk to Jesus. That's much more than an intellectual exercise. Some of us have come through our Christian experience looking at prayer as fairly intellectual. I ask God for things, and it's just highfalutin, King James English or whatever. And there's not an emotional connection there. When Jesus prayed to his Father, when he was here on earth and he prayed to his Father in heaven, it wasn't just an intellectual list of things he needed. There was a connection there. There was an emotional relationship there. That's what Jesus' disciples saw when they noted Jesus praying and said, teach us to pray. The disciples had been praying since they were old enough to be aware of life. In the Jewish culture, prayer was an everyday thing. And yet they saw Jesus talking with his Father, and they said, teach us to pray like that. Jesus is the only one who will never leave you, who's available 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. He's the only one who completely understands you, even when nobody else does. And he loves you. So you know that in your head. How do you experience that? Let me suggest that you approach it in this way. Find a time when you can get alone. Maybe that's in a nice chapel that's quiet, or a place in nature, or your own backyard or closet. I have a back porch on my home, and there's a lovely tree there that shades the porch and the backyard. And I will often go out on my back porch and just sit there when I need to connect with Jesus. Find a place, and then let your emotions flow out. Say the words that you would like to say if you did have someone to talk to. Say those words to Jesus. Just be your real self in his presence. He knows it anyway. This isn't so much, in fact, not at all, for the purpose of telling God anything he doesn't already know. It's for your own heart. So just say what you would like to say to someone. Say that to Jesus. Sometimes it helps to write that. Journaling can be a powerful way of prayer at those times. If you get emotional, that's great. Let your emotions flow out in his presence, but then don't run away. Stay there a little longer. Most of the time when we do get emotional, those emotions will rise to a peak like a wave. Think of it like a wave. It rises to a peak and then subsides. when all those emotions are flowing out of you, your mind is busy. Your heart is noisy. God usually does not speak over a cacophony of sound in our heads, in our hearts. Usually he waits until you get quiet. So get alone with him, say the words you'd like to say to someone, let any emotions that are there flow out, and then stay there a little longer. Let any wave of emotions subside. Just get quiet. And oh, God knows in our distracted society, getting quiet is hard. And then just stay there quiet for a little while. It's in those moments that you are most likely to hear him, to sense anything he does want to say to you. You can come back as often as you need. We are encouraged to do that, to come boldly before the throne of grace. Yes, ask him for what you need, but much more than that. Just talk with him as you would to a friend. Say to him what you would like to say to someone, if you could talk with them. That's step one. But a couple other steps I'd like to talk with you about as well. When you are facing a challenge and feel like you have nobody to talk with, God did design us to be in community. Let's say you've talked with Jesus, but you still, as we all do, need human connection. Step two, look for the people who you can talk with. It may not be easy to know where to look for the people who you can connect with. And so I want to suggest a couple places where you can look for those very people. First of all, survey the people that you do know. Now, if you have tried to reach out to people in your church or among your friends or family or at work and you've been hurt in the past, this can be a bit of a challenge, but don't immediately dismiss the people who you are aware of. In talking with someone and getting help for a challenge, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. There are some people who are hurtful, who are unsafe. So don't try talking to them again if you've been hurt in specific ways before. God has given us an internal sense of warning, of angst, and it's appropriate to be conscious and aware of that. But don't stay there, push beyond it, and think of any connections that you do have that you can ask or talk with about something. When you're in the middle of a big challenge, it can feel like it needs to be all or nothing. In other words, you may be looking for somebody that you can just dump on and get all the kind of fixing and help that you need in one big moment because you feel so desperate, so lonely. I know what that's like. I've been there. But I learned that God usually doesn't design one person to be everything to us. It's a body, it's a community. And there are some people who can give you some things and other people who can give you other things. So learn to look for and be grateful for the moments of connection that you can find with people in your circle of awareness. And sometimes then you have to look for other things in other directions. That's how God created our humanity. God never designed one person to be everything to anyone else. He didn't design you to be the only person in anybody else's world, and he didn't design one person to be everything you need. So be alert to it may be small bits from different people. And then let me also encourage you to look for other people with similar problems. Remember, you are not terminally unique. Your problems, you are not the first one to have the challenges that you are facing. Especially in today's world, there's an infinite variety of ways to connect with other people who do have similar problems. You can find them, whether that's somebody who has been through bankruptcy or is overwhelmed with finances. Yes, there are other people with that kind of a problem. Maybe your marriage is falling apart. I just had a very sad conversation yesterday about a couple who are friends of mine, and there has been infidelity, there has been domestic violence. It's a heart-wrenching situation, but they're not the first couple who has experienced that. God can redeem even in that situation. Maybe you're single and you're wrestling with your sexuality. How do you handle that? There are others who are dealing with that. Maybe it's pornography or depression. There are other people who have and are now struggling with that very thing. Look for them. Find them. If there's somebody in your circle of influence that's struggling with that very thing, connect with them. Walk together, whether they're a few steps behind you or a few steps ahead of you. Connecting with other people with a similar problem can encourage both of you. And thankfully today, there are online ways to connect with any of those kinds of problems. Find an online group, if nothing else. There are support groups in just about every variety available now. Connect with other people who are going through a similar challenge. So the 3 steps that I promised to talk about. Number 1, when you feel like you can't talk to anybody, talk to Jesus. Number 2, intentionally look for the people who you can connect with. And now step number 3, reach out. Be proactive. You make the move. God bless those people who see you if you are struggling and who reach out with support. But don't wait for that. You reach out. I think of the man sitting or lying beside the pool of Bethesda for 38 years. Jesus comes to him and says, "Do you want to be made well?" And my question to you is, do you want to find a place to connect? You can stay in your misery. You can stay isolated, but it is your choice. So it is up to you to make a move. Proverbs says a man who has friends needs to be friendly. When you reach out proactively, it lifts your eyes from your own problems. Do this prayerfully. Ask God to make your eyes and your heart aware of who He has put in your path. And take action. It doesn't, again, need to be all or nothing, but reach out. If there is somebody in your world who has some information or maybe some kind of insight that you need, ask to meet. Maybe there's somebody with a similar kind of struggle. Ask to get together, meet for coffee or at the gym. Ask them to go for a jog or just call on the phone, send a text. Do something intentionally to reach out and connect. Just ask a small question. Test it out. And then when you get a kind of response, if, okay, there's a little bit of safety here, go farther. And when you reach out, telling your story is important, but also learn to get quiet and listen. Sharing your story helps disengage the shame, and that is incredibly valuable. But if any other human being is going to be helpful, you will need to take the time to listen to any input they may have. So in your connection, whether it's with a counselor, a pastor, whether it's some fellow struggler in your own challenge, or even with an online connection, share a bit of your story, but then intentionally be open to feedback, to insight. Listen, ask questions, and take action when you hear something from somebody else that may be helpful. Insanity, you've heard this before, insanity has been said to be doing the same thing and expecting different results. So if you are feeling lonely and isolated, If you are stuck in the middle of a big challenge, you will need to do something different to move forward. Yes, invite Jesus into the middle of your challenge, but then ask, what next step do I need to take? And it's in taking that step that your future can be different. So there are the 3 steps again. When you feel like you have nobody to talk with, what do? Number 1, talk to Jesus. Number 2, look around for who you can connect with intentionally, prayerfully. And then number 3, be proactive in connecting with them. Take a step to be friendly, and you can have an amazing increase in the level of connection. Now, this isn't always easy. In fact, it almost never is. Most of us have come to whatever point we are in life right now with wounds that have in part come from other people. And so our fear, our anxiety about connecting is real. Acknowledge that, but then do it anyway. Reach out and proactively take a step to connect. And that will be an incredibly healthy and beneficial way to move forward. I told you that I had experienced this at times in my own life. The most powerful time when this became so important to me was when I was a young woman. I was in my 30s, and I went through a period of overwhelming emotional distress. I had sought various help. I was diagnosed with various mental illnesses. I had several different diagnoses from mental health providers. I knew God had an answer, but I wasn't finding it. My distress was so severe, I would often spend hours a day literally crying in tears. My physical body would be in pain, not because there was anything wrong with my body, but because of the mental trouble, the mental torment and pain. I would sometimes spend hours walking the streets at night in tears. God brought me through that. And my testimony is that that was then. God has freed me and healed me. The sting is gone. That is not something I'm white knuckling to try and not fall apart again. I have discovered what it's like to live in freedom from that sense of pain and torment and isolation. In coming out of that, one of the things God taught me was what it looks like to reach out and make healthy connections with others. He designed us to grow in community. And that is a big reason of why we have developed the Fully Alive group. There are many people who feel like, even after surveying all the people in your world, in your sphere of influence, that you don't have the kind of support, of feedback, of connection that you would like. You feel like you still can't talk to anyone. Well, we have designed the Fully Alive Group online community to be a place where you can talk about anything, where you can talk to other people, and it's completely safe. This next month, inside the Fully Alive Group, we're going to be specifically focused on overcoming depression and anxiety, that sense of angst, of isolation, of being down. How do you move forward when your mind and emotions are overwhelmed with those feelings? I've been there. I've walked out of that. And I have some exciting and practical things to share with you inside the Fully Alive group this month. Now, if you're listening to this when this podcast first comes out, tonight, July 9th, is our first online event this month, sharing practical steps where you can overcome depression, anxiety, and this kind of mental angst. So in the show notes, you'll find the link to go to Fully Alive Group. And if you become a member today, you can join us tonight in this online event. And I hope you do that. If you have questions, I would love to hear from you. Throughout this month, we're going to be specifically every week having online events around the topic of mental and emotional wellness, overcoming depression and anxiety and all of that. We have a special guest coming up next week who is a clinical psychologist and who has also experienced depression personally and in his family. He will share his story in a psychological perspective. We'll have an event later on this month specifically focused on the spiritual underpinnings of this and how to tackle mental well-being from a spiritual perspective, question and answer sessions. So a lot available. If you are struggling with feeling like you can't talk to anyone and you would like some help to move forward, this is a place where you can. It's an encouraging online community, professional Christian coaching available, and it's all confidential. So check out the Fully Alive group, fullyalivegroup.com, or you can click on the link in the show notes. If you have questions, send me a message and I'll respond personally. Thank you so much for being part of our podcast family. I pray for you regularly. And until next time, may God bless you.
Thank you for listening to Relationship Prescriptions with Dr. Carol. Our purpose is to provide trustworthy resources that help you and others live fully alive in every way as God intended. If you would like to help others experience transformation in their lives and relationships, we invite you to partner with us. Text the word GIVE, that's G-I-V-E, to the number 512-980-1620. Or visit our website at drcarolministries.com/donate to make a one-time contribution or monthly gift. Your financial support allows us to expand our message and to help others. Thank you so much, and may God bless you.